Hello everyone, I am very glad that you're joining this story. Subscribe, like and comment. Enjoy the story, smile more often.
I stared at the crumpled envelope on the kitchen counter for what felt like an entire damn hour, the cheap white paper already soft from how hard I had been squeezing it, my thumb rubbing the corner raw. It wasn't even addressed to me. No, it was a group invite my sister Lila had gotten, tossed casually into the pile of mail we all shared out of habit. A big, cheery pastel sticker in the corner screamed Sammy's baby shower. A celebration for real moms, in curly letters that looked like they had been designed by someone who had never worked a real day in their life. I stood there, staring at it, my heart beating slow and heavy in my ears, like some part of me already knew the truth before my brain caught up. It had started about 3 weeks back, a casual Tuesday night when Aunt Karen called out of the blue. I had been folding laundry, late again after covering a double shift at the hospital, my legs aching so bad I could barely stand. I had picked up on the second ring because Aunt Karen never called without a reason. It was small talk first, the kind that feels stretched too thin, where every laugh sounds like it is sitting on a lie. Then, without missing a beat, she dropped it. "Oh, Jess, about Sammy's shower. Listen, we're trying to keep it really special. You know, just real moms." At first, I thought I had heard her wrong because the words didn't even make sense strung together like that. I laughed, sharp and short, thinking it was some dumb joke, like the kind Karen made when she had had too many cheap Chardonnays. But the silence on the other end of the line was so thick, it smothered the joke right out of me. She meant it. Every word. I wasn't invited because I wasn't a real mom. I swallowed hard and said something polite, something fake, because it was easier than blowing up right then and there. I don't even remember what I said. Maybe something about being busy anyway. Maybe something about how happy I was for Sammy. Lies, all of it. When I hung up, I sat there for a long time, the basket of clean clothes untouched, my hands clenching the phone so tightly that the screen cracked right across the middle. No one had ever asked me if I wanted to be a mom. Nobody asked when I was 16 and Dad walked out and Mom fell apart like a house built out of wet paper. Nobody asked when I started showing up to parent-teacher conferences for Ben and Lila, signing my name on permission slips like it mattered. Nobody asked when I spent 3 summers working 2 jobs to keep a roof over our heads, or when I learned to cook real meals because nobody else was sober enough to feed the kids. And now, standing there with that cheap-ass envelope in my hand, all those years of sacrifice were just erased, forgotten. Like I was a placeholder. A fake. Like the blood, the sweat, the crying behind locked bathroom doors never even happened. It's funny, isn't it? How people can rewrite your whole life story in a single breath when it makes them feel better about their own. The worst part wasn't even the insult. It was knowing that no one else would see it as one. If I said anything, I would be the crazy one, the dramatic one, the bitter old maid who couldn't just be happy for her younger, prettier cousin. The narrative was already written, and my name wasn't even in the damn cast list. I sat down at the kitchen table, my hands trembling in a way that made the envelope shake too, the stupid smiling baby on the front taunting me. I thought about all the birthdays I had planned with dollar store decorations, the scraped-together Christmas mornings where I had wrapped thrift store toys in old newspapers to make it seem magical. I thought about Ben, who once called me Mom by accident when he was 7, and how I had cried myself to sleep that night, both proud and broken all at once. I thought about Lila's high school graduation, how I sat in the back because I had to rush in late from a shift, still wearing scrubs, and how no one even noticed. And now, after everything, I wasn't even good enough to celebrate a new life entering this family. I wasn't real. I was background noise. You ever had someone spit on every damn thing you ever did, and still smile about it? When I tell people I basically raised my brother and sister, they usually nod along like they understand, but you can see it in their eyes that they really have no goddamn clue what it means to lose your childhood before you even realize you had one. It started slow, like most bad things do, with little moments that did not seem like the end of the world at first. Mom forgetting to pick up Ben from kindergarten. Mom sleeping through dinner. Mom's breath sour and sharp like a kicked-over bottle of gin even at 10 in the morning. I was 15 then, still stupid enough to believe that adults had some kind of plan, that things would magically fix themselves if you just waited long enough. But then Dad left, and the fantasy crumbled fast. I came home one Friday afternoon to find the front door half open, the air inside heavy and stale, and a note on the counter written in angry, crooked letters. Can't do this anymore. Don't try to find me. No apology. No explanation. Just a coward's goodbye, leaving 3 kids and a woman who barely knew what day it was. I remember standing there, staring at that note, and feeling something in me snap, not break exactly, but snap into place, like a bone setting itself wrong because nobody was around to do it properly. From that day on, it was like someone handed me a job title I had never asked for: interim parent, permanent fixer, unofficial adult. I woke up an hour earlier every morning to make breakfast, sometimes just toast and jelly if we were lucky, sometimes just plain toast if we were not. I signed every permission slip, wrote every fake note to excuse Ben's missed homework, lied through my teeth to every teacher and every school counselor who asked if everything was okay at home. I memorized Lila's soccer practice schedule better than she did. I carried quarters in my backpack for the laundromat because Mom was too far gone to remember clean clothes, and somehow wearing yesterday's socks made you a target even in middle school. There were hospital visits, too. One night Mom slipped on the front steps after a bender, split her head open on the concrete, and I sat there in the emergency room with blood drying under my fingernails, trying to explain to the nurse that no, there wasn't another adult who could come. And no, there wasn't anyone else to list as next of kin. I was 16 years old when I first signed a hospital admittance form. 16 years old and already learning to lie without blinking, already learning to smile through the shame, already knowing that if you told the truth, if you said you were just a kid doing a job too big for you, the whole system would come crashing down and take your family with it. Meanwhile, Aunt Karen was living it up 3 states away, posting pictures on Facebook of poolside margaritas and flashy Vegas weekends, her sunburned skin glowing against the backdrop of casinos and desert skies. I watched those pictures roll in, sitting at the kitchen table under the flickering light bulb, trying to balance the checkbook that had numbers too small and bills stacked too high. It never once crossed her mind to check on us. Not once did she call to ask if we needed groceries, if we needed rides to school, if we needed anything at all besides her occasional, self-congratulatory texts about thinking of you guys. That always came just in time for her to look good and feel better. No one said thank you. Not once. Not when I picked up Ben from the police station after he got caught shoplifting candy because we hadn't had anything sweet in months. Not when I stayed up all night sewing Lila's Halloween costume out of old bed sheets so she could feel normal for just one damn day. Not when I sat beside Mom's hospital bed after the first overdose scare, pretending I believed her when she promised it was the last time. They all just acted like it was normal, like of course Jessica would handle it, because Jessica was the strong one, the responsible one, the one who didn't need anything from anybody. You start to believe it after a while. You start to think that maybe you are built differently, that maybe needing something, anything, is a weakness you cannot afford. I stopped dreaming about college. I stopped thinking about dances, dates, futures. My future was making sure the lights stayed on and the fridge had enough food to fake a dinner out of crackers and peanut butter. My future was making sure Ben and Lila made it to adulthood without getting chewed up by the same shitty life that had swallowed Mom whole. You know, sometimes I wonder what my life would have looked like if someone had stepped in, just once, and said, "You don't have to do this alone." But no one ever did. I carried it all in silence, shoulders buckling under the weight, and when I finally got old enough to breathe again, to live for myself, it was too late to remember how to want anything bigger than survival. Have you ever done everything for someone only to be treated like you didn't even exist? Tell me in the comments. I'm not the only one, right? Because standing there, 16 years old, slathering peanut butter on stale bread while the world kept spinning without me, it sure felt like I was the only one. It felt like screaming into a black hole and hoping for an echo that never came. Looking back, it's almost funny in a sick way how the people who watched me drown back then now have the nerve to tell me what a real mom looks like. Funny how easy it is to forget the dirty work when the pictures are all shiny smiles and party favors. Funny how they only remember the parts that make them look good. Funny how I can still taste the bitterness years later, like something rotting at the back of my throat, something that never fully goes away no matter how many times you swallow it down and smile. Growing up, it was impossible not to notice how differently the world seemed to treat Sammy, how the sun just somehow seemed to shine a little brighter wherever she walked. As if the universe itself was bending over backward to keep her golden and untouched by the mud the rest of us were forced to wade through every single damn day. Sammy was the golden child, the one who could trip over her own 2 feet and still land in a bed of roses, the one whose mistakes were adorable and whose tantrums were just her being passionate, while the rest of us got called difficult, ungrateful, or worse. I remember the first time I really noticed it, how different our worlds were even though we shared the same blood. I was 17, bone-tired from pulling another weekend shift at the diner, my hands cracked from washing dishes, and my legs numb from standing 10 hours straight, when I showed up late to a family barbecue that Aunt Karen threw just because the weather was nice and she had nothing better to do. There was Sammy, all of 13 at the time, spinning around the backyard in a brand new sundress, bought just for the occasion, squealing with delight as everyone clapped and laughed like she had just solved world hunger instead of simply managing not to fall off the swing set. Later that evening, when I tried to explain to Aunt Karen why I could not stay long because I had another shift the next morning and a mountain of homework to get through, she just patted my shoulder distractedly and said, "Not everybody needs to be so serious all the time, Jess. You should try smiling more." Smiling more. Like I had something to smile about while scraping gum off diner tables and praying the electricity wouldn't get shut off again that month. Meanwhile, Sammy got a standing ovation for winning a Most Improved certificate at her middle school spelling bee, and you would have thought she had brought home an Olympic gold medal the way the family paraded her around. Every birthday party was a production. Every lost baby tooth was a milestone worth a goddamn cake. Every scraped knee was a national emergency that required Aunt Karen to call half the family in hysterics just to report that little Sammy was a brave soldier. It wasn't just Aunt Karen either. The whole family bent themselves into pretzels to celebrate her tiniest accomplishments. Grandpa Bob, who had never once shown up to any of Ben's football games, flew across 3 states just to watch Sammy twirl around in a 5-minute cheerleading routine. Uncle Dave, who could not remember Lila's birthday if you stapled it to his forehead, sent Sammy expensive jewelry for her 16th, the kind of gift that made my chest tighten with a sour, burning feeling I hated myself for feeling. When I graduated high school, barely, by the skin of my teeth and with nobody helping me balance work and school and raising 2 kids who were technically my siblings but practically my children, I did not get a party or a congratulations card or even a goddamn phone call. Mom was passed out on the couch the morning of my ceremony, her lipstick smudged and her purse still clutched in one limp hand like a warning sign. I ironed my own gown, took the bus across town by myself, walked across the stage with a name that barely got a clap, and came home to find nothing different. No banner, no balloons, no celebration. Just dishes in the sink and overdue bills piled high enough to hide behind. But when Sammy got her GED after dropping out of high school because school was too stressful for someone as sensitive as her, the family threw her a backyard bash so loud and obnoxious that the neighbors threatened to call the cops. There were fairy lights and rented tents and a goddamn mariachi band, all for a piece of paper she barely earned and only because Aunt Karen badgered the administrators into letting her take makeup classes online. I should have been used to it by then, should have built up enough scar tissue to stop it from hurting, but the thing about being invisible is that it never stops cutting. It just digs deeper until you start to wonder if maybe you really are less than the golden ones, if maybe the universe keeps throwing you in the dirt because that is where you belong. Every time Sammy giggled through another mistake, every time the family caught her when she stumbled and cheered when she so much as breathed right, it carved another hollow place inside me, a place filled with all the things I would never be allowed to ask for. The worst part was how they only ever noticed me when something needed fixing. Aunt Karen called me once when her car broke down 2 towns over, assuming I would drop everything to come pick her up because you're the responsible one. Jess, you always figure it out. No birthday wishes, no casual check-ins, just a direct line from her disaster to my time and labor. When Sammy lost her apartment because she forgot to pay rent 3 months in a row, it was me they called to help her move her stuff into storage, as if my hands were just another tool for their convenience. I was invisible until they needed a ghost to move mountains for them, and then invisible again once the dust settled. Meanwhile, Sammy floated through life cushioned by excuses and second chances, a never-ending chorus of she means well, and she's just going through a tough time that followed her everywhere like perfume. And no matter how many times she screwed up, no matter how much chaos she left in her wake, they still looked at her like she was made of goddamn stardust. And they still thought she was the goddamn princess. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I found out about the baby shower, and even though I should have known better by then, some small stupid part of me still thought maybe it was just an oversight, maybe they would remember me at the last minute. Maybe I would get one of those bubbly texts saying, "Oh my God, Jess, it totally slipped my mind, of course you're invited." But no, life does not work that way for people like me, and family sure as hell does not either when you are the one they like to forget when the lights come on and the party favors need to be counted. I was scrolling through Facebook on my lunch break, pretending to be interested in some sad sandwich I had slapped together that morning, when a bright, pastel explosion of pink and gold smacked me right in the face. There it was, the announcement from my cousin Haley. A big shiny post about celebrating Sammy and baby Ava. Real moms only. Please join us for an afternoon of love, laughter, and all things mommy-to-be. I sat there blinking at the screen, the words blurring together into a smear of syrupy bullshit so thick it practically dripped off my phone. Real moms only. Real moms only. Like it was some kind of exclusive club that required a biological badge of honor to even stand on the same goddamn lawn. Like the years I had spent mothering 2 kids who were not mine but might as well have been did not mean a single goddamn thing. Like the nights I had sat awake with Ben through asthma attacks, and the mornings I had braided Lila's hair for school meant nothing, like I was just some background extra in the movie of their perfect lives. I could have let it go. I could have swallowed the hurt and the anger and just deleted the app, pretended I had never seen it, stayed quiet like I always did. But fate is a funny little bastard sometimes, because just as I was about to put my phone away, a new message popped up in the family group chat, the same dusty, half-dead thread they only ever revived when they needed to organize potlucks or guilt trips. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it, and that is when I saw it, the screenshots. They were laughing about it. Joking, actually. Haley had sent a screenshot of the invite to the group, and it took me a second to realize it was Aunt Karen had replied, "Should we bother sending one to Jess?" LOL. Another cousin, Mark, had chimed in with, "Does she even qualify? Last I checked, babysitting your siblings because your mom's a hot mess doesn't count." Followed by a goddamn parade of laughing emojis and little hearts, like it was all just so damn funny. I sat there frozen, my sandwich forgotten, the cafeteria around me humming with life while something inside me went very still and very cold. It was not just that they had excluded me. It was that they had excluded me and then laughed about it, like I was some sad little joke they could pass around for kicks, like all those years of survival and sacrifice were just some punchline to them, something they could reduce down to a meme. The thing about being cut open like that, publicly, cruelly, is that you stop bleeding after a while. You just get quiet. You get focused. And sitting there, with the bitter taste of betrayal sharp in the back of my throat, something sharp and brilliant clicked into place inside me. It was not going to be enough to just ignore it. It was not going to be enough to send a polite card or show up uninvited and make nice. No, if they wanted to mock the fake mom, then I would give them a show they would never, ever forget. I thought about Sammy's future, the one they all assumed would be paved smooth and easy like it always had been. I thought about little Ava, the baby they were all so busy celebrating, already decorating her life in pink tutus and tiny silver spoons. I thought about what real love and real sacrifice looked like, the kind that doesn't make for cute Instagram posts or family bragging rights. I thought about everything I had given up, everything I had poured into Ben and Lila so they could have a shot at something better, and how no one had ever thrown me a damn party for it. Maybe they thought I was invisible. Maybe they thought I would stay quiet forever, just another shadow at the edge of their shiny, curated lives. But they forgot something important. People like me, the ones who get overlooked, the ones who get underestimated, we are the ones you should be most afraid of when we finally decide we have had enough. I slid my phone back into my pocket, my hands steady now, my mind clearer than it had been in years. There would be no screaming, no crying, no drunken family brawl to satisfy them. No, I was going to hit them somewhere much deeper, somewhere they could not laugh off with a few dumb jokes and a group chat full of cowards. They wanted fake? I would show em fake. The idea came to me later that night, long after the house had gone silent, and the only sounds were the hum of the old refrigerator and the creak of the floorboards settling like tired old bones. I sat alone at the kitchen table, a battered yellow legal pad in front of me, doodling absent-minded little circles while my mind sharpened itself into something cold and surgical. I did not want to scream at them, not anymore, and I sure as hell did not want to beg them to see me, because there is nothing more pathetic than asking for love from people who have already decided you are not worth the damn effort. I wanted them to feel it, to taste the bitterness they had forced me to swallow for years, to realize just how badly they had misjudged the one person who had kept her mouth shut and her head down while they danced through life without a care. Revenge would have been too easy, too loud, and I was past wanting to throw fists at the walls of a family that was already crumbling under its own hypocrisy. No, what I needed was something quieter, something that would outlast the moment, something that would follow them into every smug conversation and every self-satisfied smile, something that would eat at them from the inside out. I pulled out my laptop and started researching college savings plans, the kind parents set up when they want their kids to have a real future, the kind of future I had fought for with bloody knuckles and sleepless nights, but could never afford for myself. It took some paperwork, some calls, a few frustrating hours wrangling with bank representatives who treated me like a nuisance, but by the end of the week, it was done. A fully funded college account set up in little Ava's name, enough to cover tuition, books, housing, all the things they were probably assuming would just fall into place because, after all, golden children never really have to struggle. The next step was the card, and this part one took my sweet time with because it had to be perfect, sharp enough to cut, polite enough that they could never accuse me of being cruel outright. I bought the prettiest, fluffiest baby card I could find, the kind dripping in pastel rainbows and tiny teddy bears, the kind you would expect to find sitting on a pile of onesies at a shower filled with women cooing and sipping cheap champagne. I wrote in careful, steady handwriting, the kind nuns used to beat into you at Catholic school, "Congratulations on the newest addition to the family. May her future be as bright as you always imagined." A little something to help her along the way, from the fake mom who raised her siblings while yours danced on tables. I read it over once, twice, feeling a small, wicked smile curl up at the edges of my mouth because it was honest and brutal and still so goddamn polite they could not even accuse me of starting a fight. There were no curse words, no insults, no drunken accusations hurled across a barbecue pit, just the cold, undeniable truth dressed up in a bow. I folded the card carefully, slid it into the envelope, and attached it to the folder containing the college fund documents, everything signed and notarized and legally airtight. No name on the return address. No signature inside. I did not need to sign it. They would know exactly who it was from the second they read those words. I dropped it off myself early one morning, slipping it into the mailbox at Aunt Karen's house while the neighborhood still slept, the air thick with the kind of damp summer heat that makes you feel like you are breathing through a wet towel. I stood there for a minute afterward, just standing in the street like a goddamn ghost, watching the house where they were probably still sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the bomb about to go off right under their shiny little world. Driving home, I did not feel triumphant. Not exactly. I did not feel vindicated either. If anything, I felt hollow in a way that was almost peaceful, like I had finally emptied out all the resentment and hurt and rage they had been feeding me for decades. I had handed it back to them neatly wrapped in pink bows and teddy bears, and there was nothing left inside me to poison my blood anymore. It was their turn to choke on it for a while. I imagined the scene unfolding in my head like a movie, Aunt Karen opening the envelope, the smile freezing on her face as she read the card, Sammy giggling at first, thinking it was a joke, then slowly realizing it was not, the awkward silences, the nervous laughter, the eventual angry texts that would no doubt flood my phone, texts I had no intention of reading because some fires are meant to burn without witnesses. I imagined Todd, Sammy's husband, reading the paperwork and realizing just how serious it was, how irrevocable, how much money was tied up in a gift they could never talk about without admitting where it came from and what it really meant. And that thought, more than anything, made the corner of my mouth twitch into a real smile for the first time in months, maybe years. Because no matter what they said, no matter how they tried to spin it, no matter how fast they scrambled to pretend it did not matter, the truth was now stapled to their perfect little lives in a way they could never fully erase. I didn't even need to sign it. They would know. It was 2 days after I slid the envelope into Aunt Karen's mailbox that my phone started buzzing late at night, the screen lighting up with a number I did not recognize but somehow knew in my gut exactly who it would be. I had been sitting on the couch, half watching some mindless reality show with the volume down low, my legs tucked under me and an untouched beer sweating on the coffee table, when it started vibrating hard against the wood. For a moment, I stared at it, thinking maybe I could just let it go to voicemail, pretend I had not seen it, pretend I was already asleep, pretend I did not care. But something inside me, something stubborn and a little mean, made me reach for it, swipe my thumb across the screen, and lift it to my ear. Hello? My voice came out rougher than I meant, like gravel scraping pavement, but I did not bother clearing it. Let them hear me as I was, tired and raw and a little bit dangerous. There was a pause on the other end, the kind that stretches long enough to make you wonder if the call dropped, and then Todd's voice came through, low and tight, the words pulled like barbed wire. Jess, it's Todd. We need to talk. I leaned back against the couch cushions, closed my eyes for a second, and sighed. Yeah, I said, keeping my tone flat, giving him nothing. Figured this call was coming. You think that was funny? He asked, voice clipped, and I could picture him standing somewhere in their over-decorated kitchen, probably pacing in that anxious way men do when they have anger but no real direction for it. You think humiliating my wife in front of her whole family is some kind of joke? I barked out a laugh before I could stop myself, a sharp, ugly sound that filled the quiet living room like smoke. Pretty sure Sammy's been doing a fine job of that herself for years, I said, my teeth clenching tighter with every word. I just put a bow on it so everyone could admire the mess. He swore under his breath, the words muffled but unmistakable, and for a second, I thought he might hang up, might run back to his perfect little disaster pretending none of this had ever happened. But instead, he stayed on the line, breathing hard like a man who knows he should walk away but cannot bring himself to do it. Look, he said finally, I don't give a damn about the party or the shower or whatever other bullshit they're spinning over there. I care about my kid. And I need to know, what the hell is this college fun thing? Is it real? I smiled then, a small, grim thing he could not see but probably heard anyway in the silence that stretched out before I answered. It's real, I said simply. Every penny. Locked up tight. For Ava. Not for Sammy. Not for Karen. Not for anybody else. Just the kid. Another long pause, heavier this time, filled with the sound of wheels turning, of illusions cracking and falling apart inside his head. I could almost hear him piecing together the timelines, the names, the stories he had probably only half listened to when Sammy or Karen talked about the hard years and family struggles like they were minor inconveniences instead of the goddamn bloodletting they really were. "You're serious," he said after a minute, his voice lower now, almost thoughtful, and it struck me how strange it was that this was probably the first real conversation we had ever had. The first time either of us had stripped away the layers of polite small talk and bullshit. "Why would you do that? After everything?" I laughed again, but there was no humor in it this time, just a tiredness so deep it felt like it came from my bones. "Because somebody's got to break the cycle," I said, staring up at the ceiling like the cracks in the plaster could somehow give me answers. "Because that little girl deserves a shot. Same way Ben and Lila deserved one. Same way I deserved one once, before the people who were supposed to protect us decided we were easier to forget." Todd did not say anything for a long time after that, and I let the silence stretch, let it fill the space between us like smoke curling from a fire you cannot put out. Finally, he spoke, and there was something new in his voice, not anger, not confusion, but something closer to respect, the kind of respect that comes too late to matter but still feels like a slap to the people who should have given it first. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "Nobody ever said. I mean, Sammy talks about her childhood like it was rough sometimes, but..." He trailed off, and I finished the thought for him in my head. Not rough enough to put down the margarita glass, not rough enough to skip the spring break trips and the birthday blowouts and the endless parade of second chances. "No," I said, voice cutting through the haze like a blade. "They don't talk about the things that would make them look bad. They don't talk about who kept the lights on, who bought the groceries, who paid the goddamn hospital bills when your real moms were too busy chasing whatever high looked good that week." Todd let out a low, humorless chuckle, the sound of a man realizing the foundation under his feet was built on sand. "You really raised them, didn't you? Ben and Lila?" I shrugged, even though he could not see it, the gesture more for myself than for him. "Somebody had to," I said. "Mom was too far gone, Dad was long gone, and Karen?" Karen was too busy being everyone's favorite and to notice the mess she left behind. There was another beat of silence, and then Todd said something that hit me harder than any insult, harder than any backhanded compliment or whispered mockery ever had. Something simple, something honest, something that cracked the armor I had spent decades building around myself. "You deserved better," he said. And that's when Todd said something that changed everything. It did not take long after Todd's phone call for the real fireworks to start, and by fireworks, I do not mean the fun kind you watch with your head tilted back and your heart light as a sparkler in July, but the kind that rip through quiet rooms and leave nothing standing but ashes and old grudges that were just waiting for a spark to set them off. The family group chat, the same thread that had sat mostly dead for months except for holiday plans and bad chain prayers from Aunt Karen, suddenly roared back to life like somebody had poured gasoline all over it and tossed in a match. At first, it was just passive-aggressive little barbs, the kind that make you squint at your phone and wonder if you are imagining the venom behind the words. Karen posted some long, self-righteous paragraph about family loyalty and how some people clearly do not understand boundaries and not everything needs to be turned into a political statement. Nobody mentioned my name directly, but you could see it in the tight, angry phrasing, the way they left just enough room for deniability if anyone called them on it. They wanted to pretend they were the wounded party, the innocent victims blindsided by a mean-spirited stunt, but it was already too late for that game because Todd had apparently been busy making some calls of his own. Within an hour, my cousin Haley dropped a message that felt like a boulder hitting a still pond. Maybe Jess had a point. Where was everyone when she was raising Ben and Lila anyway? That was the moment the cracks started to show. Haley, who had always been Karen's little parrot, the one who nodded along at every family dinner, was now questioning the party line out loud, and you could practically hear the collective gasp through the phone screen. Karen tried to shut it down immediately, snapping back with some story about how she offered help, but Jess was too proud to accept it, which was a damn lie if there ever was one. I remembered every hollow promise, every time she said she would swing by and never showed up, every weekend she blew off to take Sammy to some dance recital or shopping trip instead of checking on the kids she had promised to look after. But I stayed quiet, just watching it all unfold from a safe distance, because I knew better than to step into a fight already eating itself alive. Then Lila chimed in, and that was when things truly went nuclear. Lila, who had kept her mouth shut for years, finally let the dam break. She typed out a long, blistering message detailing every rent payment I had covered, every school supply I had bought, every night I had stayed up with her when she had nightmares after Mom's benders. She wrote about the time I pawned my class ring to pay for her braces because the state insurance would not cover them, about how she would not have graduated high school without me forging signatures and faking sick notes when our mother was too wasted to care. It was brutal and honest, and so painfully raw that even I had to put my phone down for a minute just to breathe. Watching her finally speak up, watching the truth spill out into the open where everyone could see it, felt like a slow, deep ache in my chest, not because it hurt to hear it, but because it had taken so damn long for anyone besides me to say it out loud. After that, the whole group chat descended into pure chaos. Mark, who had made that smug joke about me not being a real mom, tried to backpedal, saying he had only been joking and that everyone knew Jess had it rough back then. Ben jumped in, calling him a coward and a snake, throwing in a few choice words that made even me raise an eyebrow. Some cousins tried to play peacemaker, posting long-winded messages about moving forward and healing without ever actually acknowledging the years of abandonment they had been complicit in. And through it all, I said nothing. I did not defend myself. I did not correct their half-assed versions of history. I did not argue or demand apologies that would never come. I just sat there, scrolling slowly, letting them tear each other apart with the truth they had spent so many years pretending did not exist. It was incredible, really, how quickly alliances shifted once the money was involved. Once Todd confirmed to the group that the college fund was legitimate, once it sank in that there was a sizable chunk of money on the line tied directly to the woman they had spent years dismissing and mocking, the scramble began in earnest. Suddenly, people who had not spoken to me in years were posting little olive branch messages, trying to pretend we were all still family and that misunderstandings had gotten out of hand. They talked about loyalty like it was a card they could cash whenever it was convenient, like they had not been more than happy to leave me to rot when loyalty would have actually cost them something real. Funny how fast loyalty goes when money's involved. When the dust finally settled and the group chat went silent except for the occasional awkward birthday wish or half-hearted family meme, I found myself sitting alone again at the same battered kitchen table where I had once mapped out a life I thought would somehow turn out different. It was a strange kind of quiet, not the peaceful kind you crave after a long day, but the heavy, hollow quiet that comes after you realize you have nothing left to say to people who stopped listening years ago. The anger that had burned so hot inside me for so long was gone now, burned out like a cigarette left too long in the ashtray, leaving behind nothing but a curl of smoke and the faint smell of something that used to be alive. I kept waiting for some great wave of regret to crash over me, some ache of loneliness that would make me pick up the phone, type out an apology, extend the olive branch they all probably thought I owed them. But the longer I sat there, staring at the cracks in the ceiling and listening to the quiet hum of my own breathing, the more certain I became that there was nothing left to fix. Some things break so thoroughly that there is no gluing them back together without cutting your hands on the shards, and I had bled enough for people who thought my love was just a given, something they could borrow when it suited them and forget when it didn't. There had been good times, sure, little flashes of happiness so quick and bright you almost doubted you had seen them when you looked back, the nights when Ben would sneak into the kitchen with a comic book and a flashlight. The mornings Lila would leave me little drawings on the fridge, stick figures with wild hair and lopsided smiles labeled Jessie in shaky handwriting. Those moments were real, carved into the marrow of who I had become, and no amount of bitterness or betrayal could erase them. But the good had always lived alongside the hard, the lonely, the brutal, and pretending otherwise would have been just another lie in a life already piled high with them. Was I bitter? Maybe once. Maybe for a long damn time. But sitting there now, with no one left demanding my energy, no one left trying to rewrite the history I had lived through with my own two hands, I realized I was not bitter anymore. I was just done. Done chasing approval from people who only remembered my number when their world was on fire. Done apologizing for surviving in ways they would never understand. Done letting their version of love, transactional, performative, hollow, define what I had given so freely and so fiercely when no one else had stepped up. I thought about Ava, that tiny baby born into a mess she did not ask for, and I hoped, more than I had hoped for anything in years, that somehow she would grow up surrounded by better choices, by better people, by better love than what had been handed to the rest of us like hand-me-down shoes that never quite fit. Maybe she would never know who set up that college fund. Maybe they would bury my name in awkward silences and uncomfortable glances at family dinners, but it would not matter. What mattered was that she would have a shot at something different, something bigger, something better. And that, I realized, was enough. It had to be enough, because sometimes legacy is not the stories they tell about you when you are gone, but the small, invisible things you build that outlast their lies. Sometimes legacy is planting a tree you will never sit under, giving gifts to people who will never say thank you, loving without applause or acknowledgement because you know deep down that real love, the kind that costs you something, is not about what you get back. I stood up, feeling the weight of it all settle into my bones, not like a burden anymore, but like armor I had earned the hard way. I walked to the front door, opened it wide, and let the late afternoon air wash over me, thick with the smell of cut grass and distant traffic, the sounds of a world moving forward whether I chose to step with it or not. I was not going back. Not to the parties where I was never welcome, not to the dinners where my seat was always a little colder than the rest, not to the smiling faces that twisted into sneers the second I turned away. I had built a life out of scraps and second chances, and maybe it was not pretty. Maybe it did not come with polished photo albums and Facebook albums full of fake memories, but it was mine, earned one hard, stubborn inch at a time. And if that made me a fake mom in their eyes, then so be it. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was not the kind of mother they celebrated with pastel balloons and diaper cakes and endless toasts to real families. Maybe I was something else entirely, something they could not recognize because it was built out of pain and survival and a kind of fierce, battered love that did not ask for permission or validation. Maybe they were right. I'm not a real mom, but damn sure I know how to raise a kid better than any of them.